I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
Okay, welcome guys. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesday, Thursday, and Fridays. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Quick shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. And I believe Jimmy is here. Jimmy, if you're ready, just go ahead and give me a thumbs up. All right. Let me go ahead and add you to the stream. Hi, Jimmy. What's going on?
Hey, Sabby. Thanks for having me. Good to talk to you.
Thanks so much for coming back on. All right, guys. My special guest tonight is Jimmy Dore. He's the host of the Jimmy Dore Show. So, Jimmy, I saw that you're coming to Massachusetts, I think in May.
Oh, yes, I am. That's right. I have to get, yep.
Okay, I'll be at that show.
Oh, fantastic. Okay,
yeah.
I'm trying to hook up some shows in Boston at the same time. We'll see what happens.
Cool. Awesome. So, Jimmy, I wanted to talk to you about, because of course, Force the Vote has come back up in the news because of the concessions that, the Freedom Caucus members got from Kevin McCarthy. They actually did force the vote. And I want you to remind everyone, going back to when we were asking the progressives to force the vote against Nancy Pelosi, I want to remind everybody what was going on at that time in this country. At that point in time, we were pretty much at the height of the pandemic. So it was the perfect time to ask people, listen, we really need to push for Medicare for all in this country. But some naysayers, and I don't want to mention names, but some of the naysayers said, well, no, you shouldn't do it because it's not going to pass, as if they did not understand the strategy. Could you talk a little bit about that?
It's been misrepresented a million different ways by people who want to protect the politicians over the activists, right? So the people like the Ryan Grimms from Breaking Points, and also Crystal now is lying about what the squad's intention was. So it was in the middle of the pandemic, before we had the vaccine. People were, I was convinced if I got COVID, I was going to die, and so was everybody else. And the idea that talking about Medicare for all for a week on the news, wall to wall, is a bad idea in the middle of a pandemic where 3/4 of the country agree with Medicare for all that's a great thing that could have happened. So lots of people came out of the woodwork to lie and gaslight people about it. They said that McCarthy could become speaker if the Democrats did what the Republicans just did. And I'm not saying just Cenk Uygur did that, or just a guy with an MSNBC contract, or it was David Sirota also did that on my show, even though people somehow and wrote an article that confused the issue. People give him credit for that. The squad pointed to his article. AOC pointed to his article of why they shouldn't force the vote and why they shouldn't get a Medicare for all vote. And so these are all these people coming out of the woodwork to run cover for the squad, and they're still doing it. A lot of the Jacobin magazine, they wrote a whole article about how what the right did, the left should learn from, without ever acknowledging that there was a whole group of lefty activists pointing this out 2 years ago, and they failed to do it on purpose. Ryan Grimm just interviewed Khanna a couple days ago on Breaking Points. He asked Khanna, what are you going to do in 2 years? Because you're going to probably have the same slim majority as the Republicans just did, as if it just occurred to them. He didn't say, why didn't you do it 2 years ago? And if you're going to do something in 2 more years in 2024, what's different then that was different 2 years ago? Of course, they don't ask that question, which is why the squad and Khanna go on Breaking Points and Ryan Grimm's show, because they know they'll never be asked a tough question or a follow-up. So what was happening 2 years ago, still happening now. It's just happening on more shows. Now they invented another show, Breaking Points, so they can fucking bullshit you about what the squad was doing. And what they're pretending is that the squad had a different strategy besides what we wanted them to do. They didn't have any strategy. That's a lie. Just like when Nina Turner lied when she said that they had an inside game and it's a strategy. And she made that shit up. I'll never forget that. That rings in my head. It's called a strategy. So she was fucking shielding those people with a bullshit lie. And then those people turned around and stabbed Nina Turner in the front and endorsed her corporate opponent in her primary. And she still protects them to this day. So that's what's everybody wants to be part of at the table of the corporate table, and they want to be in the ends with the Democratic Party. Nobody has the guts to actually go against them. Certainly we saw Bernie Sanders didn't. He never made them pay a price for cheating everybody and him in 2016. Never. He never made them change anything about it. They still take corporate money. They still have super delegates. They never changed anything. They never even acknowledged they cheated him. And so they'll never stand up to him. And now Bernie Sanders is doing everything he can to gaslight you into saying that Joe Biden is FDR and he's a good guy and you should support war in Ukraine. They're all war pigs, too. So what Force the Vote did was reveal that there is no left in America. And I recently saw someone smarter than me talking about this. And he was saying that the left in America is unlike the left anywhere else in the world. Yes. The left and the rest of the world is connected to the workers. The left in America is connected to the fucking middle class bullshitters who care more about gender identity than they do about Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage, and fucking strong unions. That's what the middle class. So he made it such a great. He says even if you're of color and you're on the left in America, you're probably in the middle class, and what you're going to worry about is how many seats on the board do people of color have instead of Medicare for all, unions, $15 minimum wage, and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's why the left, and there is no left. And by the way, where are the fucking nurses organizations been in this pandemic? Not one peep about Medicare for all, which would have saved hundreds of thousands of lives if you really care. Then not one peep about it during this pandemic. They don't even bring up the public option, which Joe Biden used to get their support to run on. They're non-existent. So again, this like the leadership, and it also Force the Vote revealed that the leadership of lefty organizations are compromised and controlled and not really there to fight for you. Like the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, a lot of people join that organization, are good people, and they have good intentions, and they do good work. The leadership at the national level of the DSA is completely compromised and controlled. And it's obvious now. We still don't know who the fucking leader of the DSA is, right? And the only time they'll come out is to shit on activists. They'll never hold their democratically electives, right? They're Democratic elect. That's how that term they use. They'll never hold them accountable. They just crushed a workers' union. They just crushed a railroad strike, and the DSA is supposed to kick those Democrats out of their organization for being bad socialists, but they're not doing that. So they're just another bullshit organization to take your revolutionary energy and funnel it back into an anti-worker, pro-Wall Street, pro-war party. That's what the DSA is there to do on a national level. And it's obvious now. It's obvious that the squad will never stand up for you, like the right wing will. They actually will stand up. And the only people voting against war these days are the people in the Republican Party. And they should be ashamed of that. But what they do is they clip me when I say that and go, Jimmy Dore's telling you that the Republicans are an anti-war party. That's not what I'm saying. We have two pro-war parties. I'm saying that we don't even get token people standing up against it. We don't get token protest against war from the lefties anymore. That only comes from the right wing. So
Yeah,
I
and I
could be
think
talking about this all day and all night. I know I'm sorry, I'm
yeah.
monopolizing the conversation, but I could go on and on about this. But it's completely clear. And then people like the Ryan Grimms come out and they want to muddy the waters. People like that are there to make simple moral issues seem complicated. And they're doing it again. And now they're trying to change the subject. It's classic CIA tactic. He's going out and he's tweeting out saying, please, I'm begging people to stop pretending Jimmy Dore invented the idea of leverage. That's not the issue. Nobody's saying Jimmy Dore invented the idea of why. Let's try to confuse the issue and get people talking it and make it about Jimmy Dore once again. And so that's what they're very good at. It comes right out of a CIA playbook. It's on how to do this, how to muck up the waters, how to make things seem complicated, how to make simple moral issues seem unclear and muddy the water. That's all this is doing. And now you have Breaking Point's host doing the same thing, saying that the squad, they didn't sell you out. They didn't turn their back on you. They didn't say that what activists were doing, what activists are supposed to be doing by pressuring politicians. They said that was violence. So they're not, no, they just had a different idea and it didn't work out for them. Their strategy didn't work out. They just made a oopsie. They thought they could get their progressive values implemented quicker if they played an inside game. That's what they're saying at Breaking Points right now. That's what Crystal's saying at Breaking Points. They thought if they just played an inside game, it would work out for them. So that's another case. So they've always said at Breaking Points they want to be the new mainstream. That's how they closed every video. We're the new mainstream. But holy fuck, are they the new mainstream? Because they're gaslighting activists at the behest of politicians right out in the open, and they don't give a shit. Why else would you hire Ryan Grimm? Why would you want the Mr. Billionaire funded fucking bullshitter Ryan Grimm on your YouTube show? What is that about?
Access to politicians. That's what people have to understand. For those of you watching who are not aware, like, we don't have access, with the exception of Khanna. Khanna is the only one. He's the only one that will come on my show and like other shows. But other than that, we don't have access to any of the members of the squad. At least I don't. I never did. We don't have access to those politicians. But I think what was really important is that even in the DSA handbook, it did point out you should do this under this Trump administration. It may not pass, but you should still do it. So when people point fingers and say, oh, well, Brianna Joy Gray and Jimmy Dore wanted them to do something that wasn't going to pass, that came directly from the DSA handbook. So people really need to understand that. But you don't see them critique the DSA for putting that message in their handbook in the first place. It's not like this idea just came, out of nowhere. It came directly from their handbook. So I've actually called to DSA to remove those members from their organization. Someone called into my call-in show recently and said they used to be a part of DSA. They left DSA, and they said DSA doesn't even have a process to remove members.
Okay. What does that tell you? They're not about discipline. They're not about message. They're not about it. They're about protecting people. They don't even want to get rid of those people. They don't even want to pressure their own politicians. That's what that means. The DSA, they all tweet. Nina Turner just tweeted yesterday how we got to pressure politicians, and the AOC tweeted that out. AOC said it makes us better, and I just retweet and they blocked me. Right. So immediately Nina Turner blocked me because I was holding her accountable, and she called me anti-black. And so it's a shield that they all use, and they're all phonies, and it doesn't make me feel good. I used to like it better in 2015 when we were all on the same team and we all had a leader. But as soon as Bernie decided to bend the knee to the Democratic Party and the Clinton machine, his movement has been dead ever since. He disbanded his own movement. He extracted nothing from the establishment for turning his movement over to the establishment. He got nothing out of Joe Biden for his support during the election. He stabbed us in the back, and Bernie Sanders will never make him pay a price for that. He won't even fucking bring it up.
Nope. No. So there's a couple of things going on here as well. I do want to point this out. Now, Case Study QB clipped this. Now, this is Bloomberg Network, and they're talking about what the left needs to learn from the right.
Okay. Greg, what did the progressives, the far left wing of the Democratic Party, what did they learn from the McCarthy speaker fiasco? What lessons were taken from the strength and negotiating power of the far right over by the far left?
Two things, Tom, quickly. Number one, some people in the Democrats Party, feel that this gives them an opportunity to continue branding these extremists as the enemy. That might help them. But I think the bigger takeaway is that this is going to be a tough fight. It's going to be a nasty year. There's going to be hearings. I think there's a chance Trump could get indicted later in Georgia, later in the month. It's going to be a really nasty year. And I think the Democrats got a wake-up call by what they saw over the last weekend.
Greg, what did the
He said, I think the Democrats got a wake-up call by what they saw. Even mainstream media, Jimmy, has been pointing this out, that, wow, like the Republicans did something that the left was supposed to do. They basically looked at that strategy, that force the vote strategy, and like, hey, how can we apply this to ourselves? And so they were actually able to use that. And yes, some people mocked them for doing it, but that's not the point. Even the people who are arguing over the concessions that they got, to me, that's not the point. One of the concessions that they did fight for was to reduce the defense budget. I 100% support that. It's the fact, though, that they actually were willing to fight for something. And the squad, who's a part of Justice Democrats, that's exactly what that organization was designed to do, to go in and push back against the establishment Democrats. And a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party is what they told us. There's been no hostility from them. They've just fallen in line.
And people will make excuses for them left and right. Even people who are of good will reflexively defend them. So what happened last week with the Republicans? It just lays bare the lie that there's somebody inside the Democratic Party fighting for you. There isn't. They're all war pigs. It's all they literally voted to break a strike, for F's sake. Those are supposed to be somehow progressives. They voted to break a strike, and then they had Ryan Grimm out there live for them, saying that the workers wanted them to, and of course they didn't. So that this is the short of Christian Smalls and making things happen, or people like that, or this country is Brazil. We're done already. We'll give $100 billion to Ukraine before we'll give $100 billion to our own country. I try to say, okay, I'll meet you halfway on your corruption. You want to send $100 billion to the most corrupt country in Europe for a proxy war against Russia over fossil fuels? Okay, I'll let you do it because you've been doing it my whole life. But can you at least give $100 billion to America at the same time? How about you send $100 billion to Los Angeles and San Diego and Boston and New York and Minneapolis, Chicago, Atlanta, Florida? Why don't we do that so we could fix homelessness? Because it could fix homelessness 3 times over. Can you imagine if we invested $100 billion into affordable housing in America? Wow, that would be amazing. Almost like someone gave a shit about the people for once. It would make you feel that way, but they don't do that. And so people rightly know there's nobody looking out for them. And they don't feel there is no political party that's looking out for them. And Force the Vote revealed that. And so now people don't know what to do. And so now you see people over like at breaking points, like they're now doubling down, trying to get you to go back into the Democratic Party and vote Democrat. That's all they know. They don't have an original thought in their head. That's it. Instead of telling people stop donating and stop voting for Democrats and put that energy someplace else, because you keep voting for Democrats, that's voting for the status quo. And if you like the status quo, keep voting for Democrats. Until we take our vote away from them, they will never, ever do anything for us. Joe Biden couldn't give a fuck. Joe Biden's worse for the left than the fucking Trump was. Are you kidding me? He's deporting way more Hispanics than we are. Anyway, there was a chance to get shit done with Trump. There isn't a chance to get shit done with Joe Biden.
No, and the other thing I want to point out too, in reference to excuses as to why they chose not to force the vote, only one politician has actually answered that question to me, and that was Khanna. And the excuse he gave was that, well, it wasn't going to pass. And I said, but that wasn't the point. So I explained to him the strategy. And he said, well, if you wanted to know who supported it, all you have to do is look at who signed on to Bernie Sanders' bill.
Sabby, when he says that, yeah. He knows that that's not fucking true. He knows he's lying. And by the way, he gave a different, he knows he's lying, right? So
yep.
He knows that a vote. Well, here AOC is the one says the reason why you have a vote is so people can't say later that they felt a different way. So we know how they did, and then we could show later generations that we did everything we could to fight for this. And Khanna knows that, and he comes on your show and he's very polite and he lies to you. That's what that is. He came on my show and lied about the CARES Act, and that's the last time I'll ever have him on. He's a fucking liar. He's just like the rest of them. I thought he was different too, but the CARES Act and the way they handled it revealed all of them to be go-alongs for the machine.
That's right. And Cori Bush's response for not doing it, she told Max Blumenthal that, well, that's Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal's bill. That's not my bill. That was the silliest excuse I ever heard. Like, so you're only going to support bills that you wrote or you co-wrote? You've been supporting everybody's bills all this past year. That's ridiculous. I couldn't even believe it was such a cop-out.
It was surprising to me how long it took some people to catch on to Cori Bush with that stunt she did on the steps of the Capitol. If that wasn't a mask-off moment for you, I mean, the people still need more. Yeah. And isn't it amazing? AOC with 12 million followers will never ask them to do an action ever. Never ask them to get in the streets. Never ask them to shut anything down. Never, ever, ever. She's not an activist, but what she will do is try to smear and discredit activists who pressure her to do what she ran on. That's what she does. She said, I committed violence against her with my words.
Well, recently, AOC actually responded on Instagram. This is very funny. She responded to a question about.
I am so sick and tired of looking at her. Honest to God. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is funny. I don't know if you've seen this, but this was live, I guess, and people did ask her, why aren't Democrats trying to hold their vote and get some type of concessions? Listen to what she said.
I see some people say, Dems should negotiate to get concessions. We do all the time. But what we don't do is bring them publicly in order to empower not just Republicans, but the fascist flank of the Republican Party. And ironically, a lot of the concessions that Kevin McCarthy, in nature, they're not the same ones, of course, but the nature of some of these concessions actually do overlap with some of the concessions that have been the subject of private negotiations on the Democratic side.
We're doing it all in secret.
We have also negotiated for certain
the beauty of a transparent government, Sabby. We do everything in private and secret. That's the principle that socialists have about government. Everything should be a secret in private, and we can't tell you anything. And if we do, that's helping fascists. Holy fucking shit.
But wait till you hear what they asked for. This is the funny part.
We have negotiated for certain budgetary rules. We've negotiated there have been negotiations around committees, budgetary rules.
And you lost all those
and very similar kind of scopes and areas. But we do that prior to getting to the floor vote.
So she's gaslighting her audience because she knows exactly what people are referring to when they say fight for concessions. Those are things that benefit them, Jimmy. Like, it doesn't benefit us. I don't care what committee you get on. That doesn't benefit the American people. Even if they didn't want to force the vote for Medicare for all, they could have forced the vote for anything else for the American people.
They didn't negotiate anything. They lost committee seats. After they decided not to withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi. AOC got kicked off her committee. They all got kicked off their committees. They didn't negotiate for anything. That's another lie. That's 100% lie. They didn't do that. It'd be one thing if they did. Then we could criticize them for negotiating for themselves. They didn't even do that. They didn't negotiate anything. They said they negotiated PAYGO. And then I did a little searching and I realized they had already gotten PAYGO assurances that they would be able to repeal PAYGO, and they wouldn't, for any progressive legislation, they would suspend it. They already got that. So the only thing that's what she says, we had budgetary, she's referring to PAYGO. And that's a lie, right? I found out, I did a little searching. I found out that they had already gotten Nancy Pelosi's assurances that she would suspend PAYGO for any progressive legislation. So that's on. She's just 100% liar. It's amazing that people who consider themselves lefties will go along with this. I always thought that I had a brotherhood. We had a real alliance with people on the left and progressives and the Bernie movement, and we don't. As soon as Bernie tucked his tail and started worshiping at the altar of the Democratic Party, Joe Biden and Wall Street, which is what he's doing, everybody, they don't know what to do with themselves. And the people who have stayed consistent, like you, like me, they shit on. Right?
People.
And they try to make us out to be right wingers, right? Because we stayed consistent.
Well said. And she goes on to say this. I'm gonna play this piece here as well. This is on her Instagram, you guys, if you want to see the full. It's a long video. I only got a clip.
Not only that, but when people say Dems should do this, there's also a very critical question of just basic math. The House Freedom Caucus.
We don't know math. We don't know math, Jimmy. That's basically what she's saying here. They had enough people to withhold their vote and get some type of concession. So she's lying again.
So can I read to you from the DSA handbook?
Yeah.
What we need now to fight back against this assault is an unshakable working class movement capable of forcing politicians to reject lobbyist influence. Now is the time to be clear about our demands and pressure politicians to get on board. Pushing a floor vote in the House not only tests the political strength of the movement to make that happen, it also sends the bill to the Senate, calling the question there. Though we know Medicare for All will not become a reality under the Trump administration, a House floor vote is the best which side are you on political opportunity in 2019 and sets the stage to make Medicare for All the decisive issue of 2020. That's from the DSA handbook. That's why you would do it. Here's a tweet. Can you see this tweet? Can you read that? I'll read that. I'll tell you what this says. This week, I presented my amendment to remove barriers to research on therapeutic potential of psychedelic substances. The first time I offered it, members laughed at me on the House floor. I got 91 votes. This time, more understood. Support surged to 140 votes. We won't give it. So this is her saying you got to introduce bills more than once for it to succeed. And when did she say that? Oh, I don't have the date on that. Isn't that amazing? So they betray themselves every day, and still people don't want to see it. Still people think Jimmy Dore's the problem. Jimmy Dore wasn't nice enough to politicians. That was what Kyle Kalinske said, and that's when he lost 10,000 subscribers, and he's never gained them back. So that's what we're up against. There is no left in America. And if we stay true to our lefty values, they're going to call us right wingers. That's what they've done to you guys already.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. As if we can't go back and play video footage.
Right.
That's what's really interesting to me. But the fact that she was sitting there just gaslighting her audience. Here's the last piece of that here.
Comprises of 20. Well, we see the holdouts here comprised of 21 members. That is a huge faction of your party to go into a vote day without negotiating without satisfying. And for Republicans to go, for Kevin McCarthy to go into a speakership vote while knowing that he does not have 21 people is almost unthinkable. So there's like just the basic math of the issue. Democrats do not have a flank of 21 that would do that.
But they didn't need a flank of 21 people to do it. That's the piece that she's leaving out, and she's doing that on purpose.
So it was Ilhan Omar who tweeted out in December of 2020 that in the next Congress, 5 progressives, because the margin of victory is so small, 5 progressives will be able to hold sway policy. What was exactly they said? It'll take 5 courageous progressives. Turns out we didn't have one. She knew it. She knew it. And so again, there's AOC just blatantly lying. So who are these people who still believe in her? Who are the people who, I don't understand who the people in her district are who don't see through her.
Well, I can tell you part of the problem with her district, because I've talked to a couple people that live in her district, nobody's challenging her. No one's really, there's nobody like, no one on the left is really like trying to primary challenge her. That's part of the problem. So she's like a guaranteed shoe in there. The other thing too, when they go and do these speaking engagements, all of them came to the Boston area here. They went to the PMC class neighborhoods. Like they weren't trying to go see people that live in places like Everett or like Chelsea, like we're working class communities. They went to the college areas. They went over there near Harvard University, those types of places. That is who their base is now. Their base in the beginning, it used to be more working class, but now I see that they have adapted to that same like PMC group that the establishment Democrats have. Those are a lot of the people who are still supporting them. That's a big part of the problem.
So, yeah, so now they've shifted just like Chuck Schumer. So now their constituency is Hillary Clinton's constituency, is Chuck Schumer's constituency. It's the white college-educated liberals in the suburbs. That's who AOC appeals to because it makes them feel good. Look, this woman of color, I support her, as she gaslights and fucks over the working class.
And that's also pretty much the base for DSA too.
Yeah.
DSA is also that same demographic group. That's a big part of the problem. You would think like if their organization talking about like working class issues, they would have working class people part of the organization, not from what I've seen.
They don't. Did you see the woman who runs the DSA who considers herself biracial? She's whiter than Elon Musk. And she's with a straight face, I'm biracial. Get the fuck out of here. It's so funny. I guess I'm biracial too. But
Jimmy, what do you say to people who say, because I know a lot of people, they've thrown a lot of like hate towards you in reference to force the vote.
That's right.
As if they magically forget that Cornel West was a part of Force the Vote, Crystal Ball, Kyle Kalinske, Breonna Joy Gray. Well, Breonna gets heat too. Was also a part of Force the Vote. There were a lot of people.
Just me and Breonna get heat. Just me and Breonna get heat. Nobody gives Cornel West a hard time about it. Nobody gives Medea Benjamin a hard time about it. Nobody gives Marianne Williamson a hard time about it. All those people, nobody, they were all a part of Force the Vote. Nobody gives them a hard time. Even Crystal Ball had tepid support. Kyle Kalinske supported it up until they got that phone call that told them not to be bad, to be mean to Jimmy Dore. So and then I was persona non grata with them ever since. So yeah, there's a lot of people that were for Force the Vote, but they want to make it out like it was just Jimmy Dore. And isn't it amazing how Kyle Kalinske was silent on this the last week or two? Isn't it amazing? Because he was a big advocate for Force the Vote, and then he's been silent. And then as soon as they didn't do it, he turned on me and the activists and said we were too mean to the squad, and we have to learn how to be nicer to them. And that's how you get things done, by being nicer to politicians. And his show's been in the toilet ever fucking since.
And that's all, again, to maintain access. Who was the person who made the phone call? Because I know Bree mentioned this on Rising. She said a call went out. And I'm like, who made the call? Who was so powerful to make people pull away from this type of strategy?
I don't know. You tell me. Was it Jeffrey Katzenberg? Was it another, or was it a different billionaire? You tell me, who was it? Was it Pierre Omidyar over at The Intercept, that billionaire? They were able to get Glenn Greenwald fired. I mean, so who knows which billionaire it was that called those people? But maybe that's who it was.
Well, I think it's sad that they could just take calls from those people, because what we're starting to notice, at least like those of us at RBN, is that there was all of this energy, obviously, around this Bernie movement and the squad and the Justice Democrats, people saying, yeah, you guys need to get in there and push back against them. Some people used to heavily criticize Democrats much more than they are now. And now it's just like a lot of those people have just kind of caved, and they're praising Joe Biden for things that he should not be, like praised for. It's just like some people have just sold out. In a sense, they're going along with establishment media talking points because I guess they feel, well, this Bernie movement is over, so I'm going to go ahead and leaning in further to the right, which is where Joe Biden is.
It's amazing to see the lack of conviction, the lack of courage, the cowardice, the complete. I mean, somebody made a video and it showed Mike Figueredo and Jordan Sheridan completely saying the opposite. They sounded like me, and now they do the exact opposite. Now they're. I saw a tweet was lamenting that somebody on Status Coup had criticized the squad, and a lot of people unsubscribed from the show.
Yes.
And I was like, what audience do you think Jordan Sheridan has fucking cultivated over there? They're a bunch of goddamn blue MAGA people. That's all he's got. As soon as he turned his back on people like me and activists and said that we're being too mean to politicians, who the fuck do you think is watching that goddamn show? So I don't know how I got off on that, but
yep.
It is amazing to see. I mean, it was a Turncoat Don who did those videos. I should retweet those once a day. Those are amazing videos. I mean, what an unbelievable contrast to see those two guys, such fucking chumps and charlatans on purpose. Who the fuck, again, so when I ask who the fuck watches those shows, now we know it's Hillary Clinton voters. That's who watches those shows.
Yeah, so much I think has changed since then. It's unfortunate. Yeah, the statement that I heard that was made was that there are no progressives in the House, and apparently that pissed off some of the viewers. So I think that was the statement that bothered some people. But it's true. It's true. They're strike breakers.
They're strike breakers.
Look at the way they vote, like the legislations that they approve.
They're strike breakers and war pigs. Who the fuck votes for $100 billion for a proxy war and you call yourself a progressive or a socialist or anything? That money is going to kill poor people for who? For the military industrial complex and big oil. That's what this is all about.
Where do you think
they're not progressives?
Where do you think
I welcome Jordan Sheridan, and I welcome Mike Figueredo, and I welcome all the shit libs and TYT and MSNBC contracts. I invite them all back on board to the real progressive train. But what that would mean is that when you organize along class lines, not left, right, class lines. It's us against them, not Republicans against Democrats. That's fucking yesterday, baby. And so but they'll never stop doing that. That's all they know is called right-wing fascists, bad people. What they have to do is reach out to people like I did. You have to reach out to Boogaloo Boys and Trumpers. That's what Christian Smalls did on Staten Island, because we share a common enemy. And they're not the ones who are fucking keeping me from Medicare for all or a living wage or from fixing homelessness. And a bunch of fucking people who are desperate enough to vote for a game show host. The people keeping me from that are the people with power called the Democrats.
Yeah, I think what people may not understand too is that you have to understand, if you want any type of labor movement in this country, which some people are calling for, you can't just have a labor movement with people on the left. There's no such thing.
There's no such thing.
That doesn't make any sense. I mean, Chris Smalls knew that. I mean, Staten Island is for the most part, from what I remember, is conservative.
That's right. They're Trump voters.
So that right there just goes to show you, that's why I feel like, and they know this though, Jimmy, they know that if you're trying to unionize, you have to work with people on the other side. You can't just unionize with people who are on the left. So this idea of people saying we need a labor movement only for people on the left, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It's that shows that they're as the RBN likes to say, they're unserious people. And I've been saying this for years, ever since I had a Boogaloo Boy on my show and people pilloried more for it as if I was interviewing a Nazi. A Boogaloo Boy, it was the response to the Proud Boys. They were people who were libertarian, who were anti-Trump, anti-government, anti-cop, anti-war, and they were pro-Black Lives Matters. And people wanted to, they were like, oh shit, that means the people on the right and left could come together. And that's what the establishment is scared of the most. And so they had to immediately, that's when they started writing all those smear pieces about me in the establishment magazine, New York Magazine, Newsweek, all those pieces of shit started to smear me as some kind of right-wing fascist. They're still doing it today. MSNBC just did an article, me, Matt Taibbi, Glenn Green, the usual suspects we're the authoritarians, right? Even though MSNBC gives contracts to the former head of the fucking CIA to sit on their panel. So somehow we're the people. So that's I hope people see that's the game they play. As soon as you try to organize along class lines, they call you a right winger. They call you a fascist. They'll call you a red-brown alliance. That's my favorite, red-brown alliance. Well, what kind of fucking alliance are you going to have among workers? That's right. I mean, people are criticizing Matt Taibbi now, which I thought I'd never see people call him right wing. This is crazy. They're saying this about Glenn Greenwald. Like, these are journalists, like, people highly respected. But because Matt Taibbi has released those Twitter files, people are like, oh my God, he's right wing. I'm like, why? Because he's reporting the information that's there.
Because it makes the Democratic Party look bad. And so anything that you say that's negative, it started with me right around Hillary Clinton. That's when I lost a lot of friends in comedy, when I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton and I wouldn't shut up about her corruption. And they all thought, like, you're a right winger. Why are you helping Trump? Why are you going? No, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I have the courage to do. Okay. And you don't. And so that started then. And so now if you do anything that hurts the Democratic Party, you're immediately a right winger. Anybody to the left. That's why they had to paint Jill Stein and the Green Party as Russians. I mean, it's amazing. And then they get that Howie Hawkins, who is a CIA fucking plant, to go repeat Russiagate. So again, I love the Green Party. I love people in the Green Party, except Howie Hawkins. He's a CIA plant.
Yeah, Howie never wins, and he continues to run really weird.
And he continues to Russiagate and say the dumbest fucking shit. And he was for mandates. Holy shit, is that guy not a lefty, man?
Yeah, he was. Well, Jimmy, where do you think people go from here? Because, like, where should lefties go from here? We've talked before about third parties. We've talked about organizing on the outside, some type of direct action.
There's got to be more mass movements of workers coming together along class lines, like Christian Smalls did. I think that's the only thing that, we're doing an anti-war rally in February. I would like to see a third party start. I don't have the time or ability to do that. I wish someone would. Nick Brana was starting the People's Party. I don't know what the situation is with that, to get some candidates to run. I would love to go out and work hard for a People's Party candidate. And right now we're going to be replacing the Senator Feinstein in California. It looks like. People want to put Katie Porter in there. And I'm like, well, let's get a People's Party candidate to run because California is a weird system. They don't have a Democratic and Republican primary. We just have one primary. And then the top two vote getters are on the ballot. That was another way to screw third parties, by the way. So you couldn't have a third party alternative in the race in the general election. So that's why they did that. Right? It looks like, this is going to level the playing field. That's not what that's doing. It's actually making it hard for third parties. But since I think if we got a popular person to run for Senate, we could get it done. We could certainly point out how someone like how the squad. What is her name? I just mentioned her name, but I can't. They want her to be the anyway. They want her to run. What is her name? I just mentioned her name. The woman, Katie Porter.
Katie Porter,
right?
Yeah.
So they want her to do it. I'm sure people are hesitant to vote for another goddamn Democrat, right? After she just showed you she wouldn't do what the right wing just did. She's never going to stand up to power or the establishment. She'll never fight for you. No. And so I think she's very beatable. And I'm going to look into that. It would be nice to get a candidate that already has name recognition that can run as a third party person here in California and set the example. I would love to have that happen. We'll see. Again, I'm pretty busy. I run a company. I have, 5, 6 employees at least. And there's always another crisis over here to take care of. So and plus I'm trying to tour as a comedian. It's very hard to do all these things. I never wanted to run a business in my life. I always wanted to be a jerk off comedian. That's why I wanted to be a flake. I wanted to miss my appointments and have people try to corral me. I wanted to be the artist. I didn't want to have to be the person who has responsibility, but here I am. I have it. And I appreciate people like RBN. I appreciate people like you. There's not many allies out there willing to tell the truth and stand up. And if we're ever going to get change, it's going to be because of people like us raising consciousness and because of workers coming together across party lines. And that's my message. And, when you go to one of my shows, you'll often see, I'll see hippies. I'll see Trump voters. I'll see libertarians. I'll see socialists. I'll see black, white, old, young, just like I used to see at a George Carlin show. And, the people who are anti-authoritarian come out to my shows. I have hippies come up to me and they'll be like, what the fuck happened to the left? Nobody's for free speech anymore. They say it's a right-wing value. I know. These are the conversations I have with hippies at my shows. And by the way, when I say hippies, I mean 60-year-old, 70-year-old hippies, because there aren't any young ones anymore. They all turn into fucking brain mush, mask-wearing fucking authoritarians who want to censor their political opponents.
Yeah, one of the things, what do you think about something like what Shama Sawant is doing through Socialist Alternative, where the organization actually picks the best person that they think should run? And I think about all the things that Shama Sawant's been able to accomplish in Seattle compared to what the squad has done. And I feel like someone like her, she's been more effective on the local level. What do you think about that type of strategy, what she's doing with Socialist Alternative?
Yeah. She's the real deal, Shama Sawant. And I didn't know that that's what they did. So thanks for informing me on that. I think that's a great idea. Unfortunately, the word socialist scares the hell out of people. And it's like you're putting a barrier in front of you and your potential supporters, So that's the only problem I have with that, or concern, put it that way. I'm all for Shama and all for her organization and everything she pushes. I'm for it too. So, I think everybody can learn a lot from Shama Sawant, and it's so refreshing to hear her talk and to hear her call out the bullshitters, like when she was on and she was on with Ryan Grimm. And she just laid it out. She just said, "Hey, you're here to obscure reality." And what did she say? What in the actual fuck? She said that to him. That was great.
Right.
So,
If you criticize them too heavily, you guys, you lose access to those politicians.
That's right.
So
right.
That's what's important. People understand. Jimmy, there's this, you mentioned this earlier, Rage Against the War Machine in DC. I think you're going to be one of the speakers here. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, well, I'm not organizing it. I just been invited. I think there's a lot of people on board. I think Code Pink is on board, and they're trying to get trying to get like Roger Waters and people like that involved. So that's coming up in February 19th. I think it's going to be a nice action. I'm flying out for that. I'm going to give a speech, and fingers crossed we get a big crowd and we can make a dent, and it'll be fun watching the mainstream media ignore us or distort what we are.
Yeah, if I have to check with the hubs. If my husband can get that Friday off, we would be there.
Can you click on speakers, see what it says?
Yeah.
See who the speakers are. Oh, look, Medea Benjamin. Oh, Scott Horton. Okay, so there it is. Code Pink, Scott Horton from antiwar.com.
Yep.
Is that it? Is that all they have so far? Those three? No, we got some more. Let's see.
Garland
Nixon, David Swanson. Oh, yeah. I don't
Daniel
know.
Adams.
Okay.
Oh, they increased this list because it says Max and Anya now.
Oh, look at that. Okay, fantastic. Somebody named Supreme from the Wu-Tang Clan. Fantastic.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember him. Yeah, no, they have increased. Tara Reid. They have increased this list. Okay. Because I think when I checked recently, I just saw you, Garland, and Medea.
So let's get Cornel West on there. Let's get I say let's get I would love to get some anti-war electeds, as they say. Wouldn't that be great?
And this is one thing
the only elected people in Congress that are against it are Republicans.
Well, this is something I do agree with the libertarians on, and that's anti-war. So that is something I do agree with them on. Like, I think, guys, if you're in the DC area, if you can make it out, please try to. It would be great if they could get, I know some of these people are really hard to get because they're super busy, but it would be great if they could get like Chris Hedges. He was at the Assange one that I went to in DC recently. And then also Cornel West would be a good one too, if they could. Again, I know these people are very busy, so it's not easy to get them like on the fly like that. But and then also she would have to fly out too. But Kim Iverson would be good, to speak at this as well. But these are the organizers: the Libertarian Party, People's Party, Mises Caucus, Peace in Ukraine, Liberty Speaks, Radical Caucus, Action for Assange is one of the organizers. Punk Rock Libertarians Podcast, that's an interesting name. World Beyond War, Center for Political Innovation. So I think this is probably going to be the biggest event, anti-war event you can get in DC, you guys, for those of you watching. That should be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to make it out there. If I do, I would definitely live stream this in some way, shape, or form.
Again, this used to be one of those issues like a floor vote on Medicare for all that the left had always agreed on, that to be against war. And now that's not the case. There's people for the Ukraine war who consider themselves, progressives. And it's like, no, you're, oh my God. Anyway, so that we got to, we got to remind people that war is not a progressive value.
Yes, and these are the demands. I just mentioned that to Glenn Greenwald too. I was like, I don't know what happened to the left, but they have a list of demands. And I think anytime you're doing some type of action, you need to have a list of demands. Otherwise, people are like, okay, what was it for?
Right.
Not one more penny for war in Ukraine, negotiate peace, stop the war inflation, disband NATO, global nuclear de-escalation, slash the Pentagon budget, abolish the CIA and the military industrial deep state, abolish war and empire, restore civil liberties, and free Julian Assange. So yes, guys, if you can make it, definitely checking out. That'll be February 19th. It's President's Day weekend.
Yeah, hope to see everybody there.
All right, Jimmy, any final words for people before you go? Like, what advice would you give to people? Well, first and foremost, I asked Max Blumenthal this, and his question or his answer was really funny, but he was serious. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. What advice would you give to people who would like to get into the independent media space? What would you tell them?
Oh, well, I mean, independent news media. I mean, what you do is if you have to have a passion that you want to talk about, and you have to show up and talk about it every day to build an audience. And that's what I did. Now, I don't know how the algorithm exactly works anymore, but when I started, it used to be you had to do 5 to 8 clips a day, and no longer than 10 minutes. Well, that's changed. They reward you now for the length of view. So I do longer videos than I used to, but it takes a lot of work. And so, you have to commit to it. And so if you're serious about it and you commit to it and you have a little talent, you'll be able to be successful in this space, I think.
Well said. Well said. All right, Jimmy, thanks so much for coming on.
Okay. Thank you, Sabs. Great work. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Okay, guys. Thanks so much for tuning into that. I do have a couple news stories we're going to go over as well. Let me go ahead to some of these comments here because I don't want to forget these. Jay says, Jimmy was the first person I seen call them out for not forcing the vote. Not only that, his takedown is solid. Thank you for the super chat, Deanna. The right seems to respect their base while the do-nothing Dems lie to and gaslight theirs. That's a good point. Thanks for the super chat. Terry says, good job, Sabby. You have Jimmy on. Shout out to my comrade, JB says the Justice Democrats experiment failed. That is so true, JB. Thank you for the super chat, Bryant. Do you believe calling this out will have an impact, over impact on elections? And if so, why or why not? I can tell you, I've seen people in the past, I'd say the past year or so, slowly moving away from the Democratic Party. And that doesn't mean they're moving to the Republican Party. Some people have done that too, though. But just totally saying, you know what, both of these parties are corrupt. I don't want to belong to any of these parties. And more people have reached out to me saying they're going to vote third party. Some people said they're only going to focus on local politics. So there's been things happening all around, but I do feel that it does give somewhat of an impact. Unfortunately, though, our voices are small, at least mine is, compared to mainstream media. Obviously, they still get most of the viewers, even though their views are declining. Thank you for the super chat, Nambians. The squad exists to provide privileged suburbanites with the illusion of democracy. Well said. Thank you for the super chat, Eagle Wing Turtle. MPP and libertarians are organizing an anti-war rally. Jimmy is speaking at February 19th in DC. Why won't Brana invite the Greens? I have no idea. Maybe they have been. I don't know. But I don't know. I'm not an organizer, but I did just talk about the event. Thanks for the super sticker, Butterfly. Thanks for the super chat, Jonathan, coming to DC for the rally. Whoop, whoop. And thank you for the super sticker, JM. Yeah, I'm going to try to see if I can make it there, you guys. Like I said, I got to check with the hubs and see if he can get that Friday off. Okay, quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron, and then we're going to move on to our other news stories tonight. Thank you guys so much for becoming a Sabby patron. If you're interested in becoming a patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there. And I want to give a huge shout out to a new Sabby patron. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Pegeen Kramer. Thank you so much. You guys keep the lights on around here. And yes, we will be doing call-in tonight. So stay tuned for that. Okay, what else are we getting into tonight? We have some interesting stories I want to discuss. There's a lot happening, so I had to pick and choose here. Tonight, we are going to discuss, of course, Jimmy Dore was just here. We're also going to talk about Khanna, Katie Porter, and Barbara Lee Senate. What is happening in California? We're going to get into that discussion. I'm also going to discuss justice for Syed, a huge story happening here in Massachusetts. Not enough people talking about it. We got to spread that message. And last but not least, Georgia ballot initiative wins. We will cover that as well. But let me go ahead and get that comment on Rockfin, Eric, and I will dive on over to our next story. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Laura. AOC's betrayal right after Bernie. What a devastating time in American lives. Thank you so much for that, Laura. 100%. Okay, let's get into this California Senate race, because the other day, Katie Porter announced that she would be running for Dianne Feinstein's seat. Apparently, Barbara Lee is also in the mix of this as well. And apparently, Khanna is also interested. Now, that could really shake things up for that particular seat. Now, I do want to give you a little bit of information here about Dianne Feinstein. Now, in December, Dianne said she was not going to retire. I don't know if that's the same now. I haven't found a recent statement from her for this month. But if you're wondering why some people may want her to step down, other than her being corporate and corrupt, it has something to do with her health here, her mental health. So this piece here from the LA Times, I want to dive into this particular article here. Let me make sure I'm going to the right part here. Here we go. The article renewed calls for Feinstein's immediate resignation, even though she continues to work on legislation, tend to constituent needs, and as recently as last month appeared lucid and perfectly capable as she was during the Supreme Court confirmation hearings for Ketanji Brown Jackson. The real question is whether I'm still an effective representative for 40 million Californians, and the record shows that I am. Now, that was Feinstein's comment there. But the problem that's happening with her is that it has been reported that she seems to be experiencing some type of mental decline. So there's a cognitive issue that's going on there. She's been having problems with her memory. And that's why some people are calling for her to step down. So it's not just some people having an issue with her age. I want to make that very clear. So it says here, which brings us once more in a roundabout way to Senator Dianne Feinstein in the recent report in the San Francisco Chronicle, raising doubts about the California Democrats' mental well-being and capacity to keep doing her job. So that is why there's this push for her to step down and for someone else to take over. Now, Katie Porter, we're going to talk about her for a bit, because Katie Porter, even though some people still call her progressive per se, she's probably a little bit weaker if you're looking at the definition of a progressive. She's good on some financial issues. I will say that about her. But you have to understand where Katie Porter lives. This is important. She lives in Orange County, California. Orange County is typically a red district there, but she was able to win. Now, recently, she squeaked by. There was this belief that she was going to lose this last time around, but she was able to squeak it by. But the question is that, is Katie Porter going to be able to even pull people in her district to support her for a Senate race? So that's the question some people have. But again, it's not just her. Barbara Lee is also seemed to throw her hat in the ring. California Senate race, Representative Barbara Lee challenging Representative Katie Porter as Feinstein future remains unclear. So let's get into this particular piece here. Representative Barbara Lee is planning to run in the upcoming 2024 California Senate contest. Now, that's according to multiple reports, joining fellow progressive Representative Katie Porter on the ballot in what's likely to be a hotly contested race in which longtime incumbent Senator Dianne Feinstein may still seek re-election. Now, I'm hoping she does not. It just is what it is. So Barbara Lee has told members of the Congressional Black Caucus on Wednesday she will run for the seat in 2024. Porter on Tuesday became the first Democrat to say she's running in the race, blasting Republican Senate leaders like Minority Leader Mitch McConnell for what she called rigging our democracy. Feinstein, who's 89 years old, has held the Senate seat since 1992, but questions have emerged over the past few years about her effectiveness and mental competency, claims on which Feinstein has pushed back. Again, Feinstein has refused to resign before the end of her term and has not indicated yet whether she will run for re-election. Here's something you need to watch out for. Representatives Adam Schiff and Khanna, also prominent members of the Progressive Caucus, have suggested they're interested in a Senate run, though Schiff has indicated his bid would be contingent on Feinstein retiring. Schiff decided to step back from House leadership roles in preparation for a possible Senate run. Adam Schiff, by the way, is horrible. He was also a big Russiagator, so just keep that in mind. Let's go on. Lee, 76, has served in the House since 1998, where she has championed progressive causes like Medicare for all, stricter gun control, and raising the minimum wage. Even at one point suggesting California should raise its minimum wage to $26 an hour. Lee is a co-chair of the Policy and Steering Committee, making her the highest ranking Black woman in Democratic leadership. Her Oakland-based 12th district is one of the most heavily Democratic in the country, with a 77-point lean towards Democrat. Porter disappointed some Democrats with her re-election performance, defeating her Republican challenger in the 47th district by slightly more than 3 percentage points. Like I told you, it was close. Meaning her entry into the Senate race could give Republicans an opening in her Orange County district. So that's the thing. If she runs for the Senate race, that gives up her seat, especially if she were to lose. Here's the thing, like, that could give up her seat to a Republican in that district. Again, Orange County is typically a Republican district. So here's something that's quite surprising as well. Under California's jungle primary system, all qualified candidates appear on the first ballot, regardless of the party, with top two advancing to a runoff, meaning it's possible 2 Democrats could face off for the seat in a general election. Now, it'll be interesting to see if Khanna throws his hat in the ring here, because I'm guessing he probably wouldn't, considering Katie Porter has announced, but that's never stopped people before. Now, if Ro Khanna is going to throw his hat in the ring here for this particular race, that brings about another question, because Elizabeth Warren earlier today has endorsed Dianne Feinstein. Elizabeth Warren endorses Porter's bid, or excuse me, has endorsed Katie Porter. I don't know what I was saying there. So Elizabeth Warren endorses Porter's bid to oust 89-year-old Dianne Feinstein. This came out earlier today. So you have Elizabeth Warren endorsing Katie Porter. So if Ro Khanna were to throw his hat in the ring, it would be interesting to see what would happen there in reference to support, because one would assume that Elizabeth Warren would support Ro Khanna. We'll see. We'll see. Now, it goes on to say here, Katie delivers because she's smart and she has a backbone made out of steel. She is exactly who Californians need as their next senator. So that's coming from Elizabeth Warren. So that's that. I mean, she announced that endorsement pretty quick, considering that other people may also run in this race. Now, in reference to Ro Khanna, you know, he's been making a lot of appearances lately. He was recently on Counterpoints, and he was questioned about Force the Vote from Ryan Grimm. Listen to what Ro Khanna says here. Again, he knows exactly what he's doing. I told you guys, I really do believe that Ro Khanna will run for president at some point, maybe 2028, I believe. But listen to what he says here about Force the Vote.
If Democrats take the House back in 2 years, which seems plausible, it'll probably be by a narrow margin. Is there any thinking going on in the Progressive Caucus now to say, what are we going to demand when that comes around?
I don't know why that's funny, but also notice again, he doesn't use the words force the vote. This is something I've been noticing.
Hakeem Jeffries was warned by Kevin McCarthy, right? He said, I had a unanimous vote 2 years ago. Look, I think there are arguments for it, for example, Medicare for All, to get hearings on that, to get a vote on that. But here's the difference, and I believe the fundamental difference with the Freedom Caucus and the Progressive Caucus. The Freedom Caucus, by their own definition, just wants to blow things up and cut things. I mean, that's why they're in Congress. And I disagree with it. I'm not questioning their motives. They're in Congress because they want to reduce spending, cut government. That's an easier thing to be a no on than saying, okay, we want Medicare for All, which is we have to have legislation, draft it, and just say it's a harder thing to do when you have an affirmative agenda. So
too hard, not going to try to do it. It's too difficult, So we're not going to go there. That's what's happening.
So the progressives are never going to be blow up government or let's just hurt government. But are there lessons in terms of saying we want more progressives on certain committees, we want certain bills to come up for a vote? Sure. I mean, I think that those are things that progressives should consider.
I think that those are, does he sound like he's congested? He might be. I think that those are things that progressives should consider. Again, Ro Khanna knows exactly what he's doing. He's looking out for his political career too. Notice how he talks out both sides of his mouth there in that clip. Those are things that progressives should do. But, you know, it's easier for the Freedom Caucus because they're just looking to blow things up and they're not looking to produce any type of legislation per se. They're not doing those asks. So he talks out both sides of his mouth. He makes it seem like, yeah, I'm against, you know, what the Freedom Caucus did. But at the same time, you know, could progressives do something like this, asking for things in the future? Yeah, I think we should look at that. This way, he's cool with both sides. He plays in the middle. Now, back to Katie Porter. She did announce, like I said, that she will be running for that seat. Shout out to Case Study QB. Let's take a brief look at this interview that Katie Porter had here with Lawrence O'Donnell. By the way, I want to remind you, Lawrence O'Donnell was the one that told people on national television that if you want the Democratic Party to basically change for you, you have to stop voting for the Democratic Party. If you continue to vote for them, they are never going to change. That came from Lawrence O'Donnell. Let's listen in.
The first time Katie Porter went to work in a House committee hearing in 2019, we saw right away that Katie Porter knew how to use props and knew how to play to the cameras recording the hearing. Katie Porter whiteboard instantly became her trademark in hearings. She joined us on this program after that first hearing and has been a steadily rising star in the House of Representatives since then. On Friday night, even though she had no opportunity to speak on the House floor, Katie Porter knew the power of the prop. As you see in this photograph, where she is so plainly reading or pretending to read a book titled The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F. Katie Porter is joining us tonight for an exclusive interview about the big announcement that she made today.
The threat from so-called leaders like Mitch McConnell has too often made the United States Senate the place where rights get revoked, special interests get rewarded, and our democracy gets rigged. Especially in times like these, California needs a warrior in Washington. That's exactly why I'm announcing my candidacy for the United States Senate in 2024. I don't do Congress the way others often do. I use whatever power I have to speak hard truths to the powers that be, to not just challenge the status quo, but call it out, name names, and demand justice.
Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Katie Porter of California, who is now a candidate for United States Senate. Congresswoman Porter, the first question has to be what America's been wondering since Friday night. Were you really reading that book or just pretending to read that book for the photograph?
I was absolutely reading that book. It was actually my fourth book of the week. I had read a book basically every day during those interminable alphabetical votes in which the Republicans struggled to find leadership. And so that book I picked up at a little free library on my walk from my basement studio here in Washington to the Capitol building.
Okay, so you really were reading it. So Senator Dianne Feinstein, that's the seat you'd be running for. She is 89 years old. She would be 91 years old during the re-election campaign if she joins the re-election campaign. 92 years old when elected. That would take her term up to 98, 6-year term. She issued a statement today in reaction to your announcement saying, everyone is, of course, welcome to throw their hat in the ring, and I will make an announcement concerning my plans for 2024 at the appropriate time. Right now, I'm focused on ensuring California has all the resources it needs to cope with the devastating storms slamming the state and leaving more than a dozen dead.
At this point in time, she's 89 years old. The question that I have is like, why would you even want to stay in at that point? Listen, let me tell you something. At 89 years old, I would just retire. I would have no problem retiring. Actually, I would retire before 89 years old. But I'm just saying, like, why would you still want to stay there and work? Why? Go live the rest of your life in peace.
What is your reaction to that statement by Senator Feinstein?
Well, I would echo what Senator Feinstein said. I think she's exactly right. This should be a race in which there are different people stepping up and Californians get to decide who represents them in the U.S. Senate. Dianne Feinstein is a trailblazer, and the path that she has created for women in politics is one that I was able to follow right to the House of Representatives, and she has accomplished a lot, and I look forward to following in her footsteps to represent California in the U.S. Senate. I also want to echo what Senator Feinstein said about the terrible storms that are ravaging California right now. But those storms really illustrate what's at stake. We cannot continue to have a Washington that ignores the threats of climate change, that is willing to cozy up to special interests like big oil rather than stand up to them. So my kids are in California. I hope they're staying safe and dry. And my thoughts are with the first responders and all of the people who are suffering and having to bunker down and be safe. But this is what's at stake in this race. Are we going to have a Senate that stands up to problems like climate change, that understands that our future is under attack?
You are already being criticized by some Democrats in California Democrats who could be rivals to you in this campaign for announcing in the middle of this storm, saying that that's an inappropriate time when California is being battered this way to announce a campaign like this.
Really? So let me get this straight. There's a certain time that you have to announce when you're going to run for. I don't know about that one. Name names, Lawrence. You said certain people in this race. Who said it? Was it Barbara? Say it, Lawrence.
Well, as I just said, those storms, which are going to keep coming in the next few days, in the next few months, in the next years, are a result of us ignoring problems for too long in Washington, decade after decade, of not being willing to fight for our environment, of not being willing to understand that climate change is real. So I think it's important that we understand the storms illustrate that we do not live in typical times. In my 3 terms in the House, I was sworn in the first time in the longest shutdown in government history, the second time during an insurrection, and the third time 15 votes to try to find a leader of the House. Washington's broken, and we're seeing the effects in California right now of that broken system. So while my heart goes out to everyone in California, and I am watching and supporting our local officials, our transit workers, our first responders, everybody who's helping right now, we need to send people to Washington who are going to solve problems like this. That's the best thing we can do to ensure California and the country are safe going forward.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, Katie. Actually, I don't hate to say it, but I hate to be the bearer of bad news here. But if you in Washington and the rest of your comrades continue to vote for the military-industrial complex, continue to support war actions abroad, continue to support drone strikes, you are not in any way, shape, or form getting closer towards curbing the climate crisis. The military-industrial complex is the largest single most polluter in the world. So until I see you guys become anti-war, stop dropping bombs, you're not serious either. You see, this is the piece a lot of them seem to leave out. They want to bring up recycling. They want to bring up electric vehicles. That's Pete Buttigieg mark right there, by the way. Let's get an electric vehicle. That'll solve the climate crisis. Pete says this as though everyone can afford to just buy a car. Things like that. You know, that's like PMC brain. You know, that's PMC brain. But none of them are serious. None of them. If they are still voting for war legislation, if they are still voting to increase that defense budget, which is now over $800 billion, freaking ridiculous. That is more than it was when we were at war with Iraq. It has continued to increase since 2011. We are not at war. This is all for these weapon manufacturers. This is for companies like Lockheed Martin, for companies like Raytheon, Northrop Grumman. It's for those types of companies, and they profit off of it. War is a profit. So when there is money to be made, they don't care about whether or not this hurts the climate and the environment. They're just trying to make money. So if you're still voting for those things, then you are not serious about climate change either. That's the funny part about this conversation.
You know, it's very common for sitting senators who are choosing not to run in the next election cycle to announce immediately after the election that we just had. I know the senator I worked for, New York Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, he announced that he would not run for re-election on November 7th of 1998, meaning he wouldn't run in 2000. He announced it the full 2 years ahead of time, immediately after the previous election, and so that any candidates thinking of running for it could use the full time they need in an extremely expensive state like that to mount a campaign. The campaign was eventually mounted by Hillary Clinton, who won that seat. What do you say to voters, though, who don't think about the challenges of running in the biggest state in the union with the most television markets of any state in the union, the most expensive place to run anywhere in America? What do you say to voters who are exhausted by the politics of the last election, that here you are, as far as in their sense of it, immediately announcing the campaign for another election?
I think Californians and Americans understand that Washington isn't delivering for them. And they see that the election after election, that doesn't change. Corporations continue to get their way in Washington while families get left behind. And what they want to see is leaders step up and run to represent them, to put their interests first, not to cave to special interests. And so I will tell you, in talking to voters across Orange County in my own very competitive races, They want more from Washington, not less. They want more people to listen to them, to engage with them, to visit their communities, to hear their problems. So announcing early gives me the time to do the work of understanding California and being ready to fight for it when I'm sworn into the Senate.
Quickly.
She said when she's sworn in, so she's already saying she's going to win. This is interesting.
Before we go, let me ask you a current House business question that I just asked Congressman Goldman. Would you be willing and volunteer to serve as one of the Democrats on this new select investigative committee that the Republicans are creating?
Well, I'm always willing to step up and serve when asked, but I will tell you I'm very, very excited about the work that we're going to have to do on the Oversight Committee. That will be a full-time assignment, I think, as well. I'm going to continue my work on the House Natural Resources Committee, but of course, I am always willing to step up and help my colleagues, help Democrats, help Americans get the government that they deserve.
Congresswoman Katie Porter, hoping to become Senator Katie Porter. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
So there are some problems with Katie Porter, which wasn't mentioned in that interview clip, which if I were interviewing Katie Porter, I would have definitely asked her about these allegations that she has in the workplace. Some people don't want to talk about it. This came out at the end of December. I'm going to talk about it. People need to, well, she needs to start answering these questions. Representative Katie Porter used racist language, ridiculed people for reporting sexual harassment, ex-staffer claims. An ex-staffer for Democrat Representative Katie Porter of California alleged that the Congresswoman made rude and racist comments to staff and said that she ridiculed people for reporting sexual harassment. I can't make this up. I can't. Sasha, a Navy veteran and former wounded warrior fellow for Porter, also alleged that she heard the progressive Congresswoman using racial slurs when talking to staff. Porter is currently facing scrutiny after leaked text messages showed her berating Sasha for catching the Rona. We're going to call it the Rona. I got to be careful here. For catching it. Sasha also said that Porter ridiculed people after they had reported sexual harassment in her office, as well as made fun of individuals whose parents passed away from it. Lawrence O'Donnell did not ask her about this. This is recent, by the way. It's not like this is something that happened a couple years ago. This was December. Basically told the individual to grow up. Sasha noted that the staffer who worked with her during her 2-year period in Porter's office left the office shortly after sexual harassment conversation with the Congresswoman. She also noted the individual hasn't filed anything with the Ethics Committee, but spoke about it with Porter personally, and that was her response. The Navy veteran called a Facebook Live event around the time of Porter's infection in July, which Sasha previously told Fox News Digital excommunicated her from the office for violating, where the office communications director had set up the ring light and iPad, and then Katie came in and completely dressed her down in front of me. This is a longer article here. This just, I'm sorry, but Porter's office did not respond. Here's another thing. Porter's office did not respond. Sorry, I lost that thing. Porter's office did not respond to Fox News Digital request for a comment. A Twitter account, make this smaller. A Twitter account called Dear White Staffers posted screenshots of conversations with anonymous ex-Porter staffers where the allegations of her saying rude, racist things while trying to mask it as edgy humor and bad-mouthing Democrat leadership. Whew, thinks she knows better and talks about other members, leadership, staffers, local elected officials, etc., at full volume in public and to literally anyone who will listen. The anonymous account also accused Porter of being completely disinterested in representing her district in Congress adding that the only staffers who appear to survive are super fans that participate in and overlook the abuse. Guys, this is huge. The only staffers that appear are the ones who are super fans that participate in or overlook the abuse. Okay. The claims come as Porter is hit by an avalanche of accusations following the Dear White staffer's account initial post regarding Sasha's excommunication from the Congresswoman's office for violating office protocols by catching the Rona. Porter has a history of controversial text messages that have surfaced, such as her berating of Irvine, California Mayor Farrah Khan after the Congresswoman trashed the Irvine Police Department following her violent town hall last year. In the text, Porter criticized Khan, saying that she would not call the mayor after the arrest of Julian Willis after he allegedly punched a pro-Trump protester, giving the protester a bloody nose. You can lecture me on professionalism and see what happens, Porter wrote in the text. So, what's really going on with Katie Porter? And Lawrence O'Donnell didn't ask her about this at all in the interview. Again, that's recent. This is a recent story. Very interesting. Very interesting. I'll take those comments on Rockfin, Eric. It's crazy, man. The next person who interviews Katie, you need to ask her about this. You need to know about that. Thank you for the tip, Costello. Sabby and Jimmy, love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for the tip, Roger Meadows. Sab, I think I just got another reason for why it's imperative we do state route via CBI process when it comes to single payer. I think Biden just put us on the path to privatize Medicare, implementing it today. I DM'd you what I got from the physicians for a national healthcare program. So he's not just not going forward towards single payer, and he's not just staying stagnant, but reversing. CBIs, people, CBIs. He's talking about congressional, he's talking about ballot initiatives. Thank you so much for that, Roger. Let me go to some of the comments here. Thank you for the super chat, Bryant. Sabby, thank you for correcting my typing faux pas. I am working and watching you and RBN from home office. You know, it's interesting, the number of people that tell me they watch us when we're at work. It's kind of funny. I used to listen to like podcasts on the download when I still was on campus. I used to do that too. Thank you so much for that. Delthea says, senility starts off with short episodes. The episodes get longer until normality is the episode and senility the norm. Feinstein is senile. I think you meant senility. I should have said senility. Sorry. Thank you for the super chat, Jay the Informant. S. Crew Lee. Screw Lee. Thank you for the super sticker, Sigrid. Thank you so much. Thank you for the super chat, Arthur Handy. Sabby, you and R&B got to look into the LAPD killing of Keneen Anderson sick. Yes, that's another one on my list someone told me about. And JB says politicians who have super fans are problematic. Yeah. I don't know, but that story that's cringe, man. People need to ask her about that. Seriously. We're moving on to our next story here. This is a local story that's not getting a lot of attention. And all I can say is, guys, please share this with as many people as possible because more people need to know about what happened to this kid. So Syed, he was a UMass student, University of Massachusetts, for those who are not aware. And he was killed here in Massachusetts, in Cambridge, by Cambridge police. Now, earlier this week, there were protests outside of City Hall in Cambridge, demanding some type of accountability for the police. The family is very upset, obviously. Let's get into this story. You know, it's not often that I talk about police brutality in Massachusetts, but here we are. Justice for Syed. Hundreds of protesters gathered Monday afternoon in Cambridge demanding answers from the city after a 20-year-old UMass Boston student was fatally shot by the police last week. Syed Faisal, sorry, I'm trying to get this to move. Syed Faisal of Cambridge was shot and killed by an officer on Wednesday, January 4th, when police say they responded to a report of a man jumping out of an apartment window with a knife. Police have said that Faisal was fired on after he approached responding officers with the knife and after a less than lethal sponge round failed to de-escalate the situation. I just want to jump in here for a second. Let's all remember that's the police version of the story. They're not going to tell on themselves. But there's something else I want to point out about this story that doesn't seem right. There's something off here. An investigation into the fatal shooting is underway by the Middlesex County District Attorney's Office, and city officials have promised transparency in the ensuing days of public outcry over the young man's death has grown. So Syed's family has said the 20-year-old had no history of violence and had no record of any kind with law enforcement prior to the confrontation that claimed his life. This is what we know so far. So here's the Cambridge apartment here. Let's go on. The incident began to unfold around 1:15 p.m. on January 4th, when a resident of the city's Cambridgeport neighborhood called 911 to report seeing a man with what appeared to be a machete jumping out of the window of a neighboring apartment. So this is how this all started. Someone called the cops. They saw him jumping out of the window with what they thought was a machete. The caller told 911 that the man appeared to be cutting himself both with the blade, which was later identified by the police as a kukri knife. I'm not familiar with that. And broken glass from the window. Now, here's the piece we want to highlight here. He appeared to be cutting himself. So at this point in time, is he a danger to someone else or is he a danger to himself? And for a family to come forward and say that he's had no history of violence, that tells me something else was going on here. This to me sounds like this is more like a mental health issue. Let me go on and I'll tell you why later and what I think should have happened. Paramedics and police officers responded to the scene, according to authorities, where they found the man identified by authorities as Faisal bleeding in an alley behind a Sydney Street building. So again, he hurt himself. The DA's office and police said the initial investigation into what happened next suggests that after seeing the police, Faisal ran with the knife through several blocks in the Cambridgeport neighborhood. Eventually, officers reportedly attempted to verbally engage with him on Chestnut Street, asking him to put the knife down. Authorities said when Faisal allegedly moved towards the officers still holding the knife, one of the officers discharged a less than lethal sponge round in an attempt to de-escalate the situation. That round was unsuccessful in stopping Faisal. He continued to advance towards officers in possession of the weapon. One officer discharged their department-issued firearm and struck Faisal. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. He was immediately rendered medical aid on the scene by officers until EMS arrived. Okay, let's talk about this for a second before we go forward. Here's what I think should have happened. Again, I always want to go back to the piece here. he was a danger to himself, not to other people. He was hurting himself, not other people. I really do believe it appears what was happening here was some type of a mental breakdown. Could have been a depression, bipolar. I don't know. But for the family to say there was no history of violence, something else happened here. Bill Bradley says self-harm is almost certainly a mental health issue. Agreed, Sabby. So here's what I think should have happened. This is where when police, when they approach these types of situations, they are not trained to handle mental health situations. This is where it would be great to have a mental health expert on the scene. Now, some places locally have already started doing this because of defunding efforts from other police cases as well. Some towns have already started doing this. They've already started implementing like caseworkers and mental health experts to handle these types of situations because, again, the police aren't trained to do it. So if you're not trained to do it and you see someone with a machete who apparently is trying to hurt themselves and they just kind of take off running towards you, the police first response is going to be, okay, we got to stop them. So they're going to shoot them. I don't believe that is the right response. And again, you need to understand this is the narrative that is coming from the police department. Again, they are not going to tell on themselves. So far, there appears to be no body cam footage. So far. So how do we know that they're telling the full story? How do we know they're telling the truth? It doesn't seem to be any other eyewitnesses as of yet. So again, this kid died, you guys. College student, by the way, in reference to mental health issues, it is not uncommon for that age group in particular, because this is something I've read about for a research paper, for that age group in particular, that tends to be the age where people will start to have, hold on, clip my thing up here, will start to have some type of an episode, whether it's bipolar, whether it's schizophrenia, whatever it may be. There's a book called Me, Myself, and Them. You guys should read that book if you get a chance. It's one young man's account about his battle with schizophrenia. And they go through all that in the book where he talks about what research shows in reference to when people tend to have that first episode for young men. Let's go back in. The 20-year-old was taken to Massachusetts General Hospital where he later died. Investigators are in the very early stages of this investigation, which is being conducted by the Middlesex District Attorney's Office. So Middlesex, Cambridge is in Middlesex District, by the way. Good luck with the DA, by the way. Massachusetts State Police detectives assigned to the District Attorney's Office and the Cambridge Police. And I laugh because the Cambridge DA is a joke. That's why. JZ said, that's right. It's the age. That's why you have no idea if he planned to knife the cop. I would like to see the body cam footage. That's what I would like. Because right now, like I said, it's just their word against his. Well, he has no word because he's dead. So I don't know. Law enforcement officials are asking that anyone with information about the case contact Cambridge or the state police. Now, this comes from the mayor of Cambridge, said that they are deeply saddened by the fatal shooting, expressing their condolences for Syed's family and promising community meetings to process the tragic loss of life. Eric, will you share this article with people in the chat? Here's what the family has said. So there's pictures of him here. This was the protest outside of City Hall in Cambridge. His parents said they are completely devastated by the death of their only son, who they buried on Saturday. In their statement released on the behalf of the Massachusetts chapter of the Council of American Islamic Relations, they expressed disbelief that the 20-year-old boy, who they called Prince, is gone. Prince was the most wonderful, loving, caring, generous, supportive, and deeply family-oriented person. He loved to travel, create art, and play sports with his friends. He expressed his feelings through gifts, and he never forgot special occasions and always made sure that those around him felt appreciated. Syed had deep relationships with his friends, family members, cousins, and community members, according to his parents. He treated everyone with love, respect, and loyalty. Prince was a normal, law-abiding citizen who had no record of any kind with law enforcement. He was never violent towards anyone. We want to know what happened and how this tragic event unfolded. We will cooperate with the law enforcement and the Middlesex DA's office as they investigate to have an understanding of this devastating event. Please share this story with as many people as possible. He was 20 years old. The book that I was telling you about, Me, Myself, and Them, the guy who wrote that book, his episode happened when he was 19. So, yeah, another one. Very sad. I just can't help but think how that could have been. He could probably still be alive today if it were handled differently. But to me, that sounded like a mental health episode. That's what that sounded like. Bill Bradley said, start with the mental health professional. They know how to de-escalate with someone having a mental health episode. Exactly. Exactly. Gamer said 20 is way too young. So sad. So sad. JB said, damn, this is sad. Yeah, 20 years old. The Oracle, how very tragic. Edward said, this is baked into the U.S. policing model, top to bottom. I don't know, man. Shout out to Betsy for sending me that story. Because like I said, not enough people are talking about that story. All right, we're going to go to the final segment tonight. We've been going through the ballot initiatives for all of these states that are BI states, and we have now made our way to the state of Georgia, the Peach State. Let's bring it on home. Georgia has 4 ballot measures that they had on the ballot for 2022, and all of theirs passed. Let's go ahead and get into Georgia. Always on my mind. Had to say that. Georgia voters do not have the right to place their initiatives on the ballot to pass and repeal state laws and amend the Georgia Constitution on their own. Voters only have the power to ratify into the Georgia Constitution what the legislature puts before them through what is called a legislative referred constitutional amendment, aka state legislature initiative. So the first one, Georgia Amendment 1, suspend compensation for assembly members and public officials indicted for a felony measure. This passed by 88.48%, where a yes vote supported suspending compensation for the following public officials while the individual is suspended from office for being indicted for a felony. Any member of the General Assembly, governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, state school superintendent, commissioner of insurance, commissioner of agriculture, or commissioner of labor. In other words, if you fall into one of those categories and you are indicted for a felony, you will not receive compensation. It's basically what that one says. So that's interesting. Roger Meadows left a note here. Look how much that passed by. There should have been an accompanying hell yeah as one of the options. Let's go to ballot measure number 2. So Georgia Amendment 2, temporary property tax change for disaster areas measure. So this is probably what the third state that I've done so far that had property tax measure for 2022. So here we go. A yes vote supported authorizing local governments to grant temporary tax relief with additional details to be defined in statute to properties that are damaged or destroyed due to a disaster and located within a nationally declared disaster area. This passed by 91.85%. That one's huge. Jesus. Now, the amendment was passed unanimously by both chambers of the Georgia State Legislature. So that one is huge. I don't know anyone anymore that lives in a disaster area. I did have a friend that lived in a disaster area in Florida, and they lost their home not too long ago, actually. So there's supposed to be some other type of insurance that you can get with that if you live in a disaster area. I'm not sure how it works in Georgia, but I know in Florida, that's another big thing because they have all the hurricanes and all that kind of stuff. But this one was important to know. So that one is that. And I think there's a video there for that one too that I can show, depending on how long the video is. But let's go to, JB said huge. All right, number 3, Georgia referendum A, timber equipment exempt from property taxes measure. So here's another one for property taxes, where a yes vote supported exempting timber equipment from property taxes. Now this one passed, but this one was a little bit close. It passed by 59%. It says here, Andre with the Georgia Forestry Association says the $39 billion industry is made up of several small business owners that employ 140,000 workers in Georgia. The same tractor owned by a farmer pays no ad valorem taxes whatsoever. When it's owned by a forester, it pays ad valorem taxes. We just believe whether you're producing peanuts, peaches, cotton, or timber, that's all a part of the agriculture family, and we want to be treated the same. Jonathan Parker has been working in timber for 40 years for his machines. He pays between $25,000 and $35,000 a year in taxes. Damn, that's a lot. It doesn't seem like a lot, but our business is so marginal. So Roger Meadows put a comment here. Ballot initiatives may not always be sexy, but they often can be a necessity. So again, that one is timber equipment exempt from property taxes measure. I don't know if any of you are familiar with timber. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat. If any of you are from Georgia, let me know in the chat. And last but not least, Georgia referendum B, merged family-owned farms and dairy and eggs tax exemption measure. This passed by 76.46%. This measure expanded certain property tax exemptions provided for agricultural equipment and certain farm products to allow any entity that is a merger of 2 or more family-owned farms to qualify for the exemption, and 2, to extend the exemption to include dairy products and eggs. The agricultural equipment exemption applies to farm tractors, combines, and all other farm equipment, except for motor vehicles that are owned or held under a lease purchase agreement by a family farm entity that are directly used for the production of farm products. going into the election, the farm products exempt applied to livestock, crops, fruit, nut-bearing trees, bushes, and plants, annual and perennial plants, Christmas trees, and plants or trees grown in nurseries to be planted elsewhere. Family farm entities under the measure mean an entity that has derived 80% or more of its gross income from bona fide agricultural uses within this state within the year immediately preceding the year in which the exemption is sought. Such entities may be organized as a family corporation, a family partnership, a family general partnership, family limited partnership, family limited corporation, or a family limited liability company in which all interests are owned by one or more citizens that are related to each other within the fourth degree of civil reckoning. Who supported this? Governor Brian Kemp, Senator Larry Walker, Representative Robert Dickey, Representative Terry England, Representative John LaHood, and Representative Clay Perkle. Organizations include Georgia Agribusiness Council and Georgia Farm Bureau. Let's see who opposed it. No one. So there you go. So that in a nutshell is Georgia. I think I'm doing pretty good with time, but we're going to be heading over to call in just a second. But yeah, so those are the BIs for Georgia. So I hope you guys are learning something when I do these ballot initiatives, when we break down each state, because as you can see, each state is different. So that's important to know. That's why it's hard for me to just do them in such a blanket way, because each state has different rules. Georgia in the house? Davey, Georgia here. Let's have a dinner date and talk about it. I'm in Massachusetts, Davey. Are you coming to Massachusetts? But yeah, pretty interesting. All right, Eric, I am going to take a little quick break, you guys. I'll come back and then we'll head over to call in. Eric, I think there's a couple of super chats and maybe a rock that hasn't been read. And then I'll be right back.
All right. How's everybody doing on this Thursday night? I think I got the day of the week right. Yep. So this is when we give Sabby a little break before we're going to be jumping into the call-in. Let's see. Let me get posted. Right, that ain't it. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the right link here. So we'll post the call-in link in the chat. There we go. All right, so you can hit that link and bring up call-in on your browser and listen that way. You can bring it up on your cell phone by installing the call-in app, and we want to hear from you. And actually, I can show the call-in tonight, and you can see what the topic is. Let's bring that up. There we go. Tonight's topic is on call-in Jimmy Dore interview recap. What did you think of the interview? What did you think of Jimmy Dore? We could also talk about what we think about the upcoming DC event, Rage Against the War Machine. It sounded pretty good to me. It sounds like we're going to have to see how many of we all can meet up there and see what that rally is like. I mean, you got Jimmy Dore there, you got Max Blumenthal and Anya Parampil, Garland Nixon. We'll see who else shows up. So that looks like the event to be at on February 19th. All right, we got some chats, so let's clear this one off. Let's make the screen look like that. All right. What to do from thanks for this excuse me, thanks for the super chat. Radical leftist extremist says, have you heard of Chat GPT? My super chats were ignored. I'm not sure about the super chats. I personally have heard of Chat GPT vaguely, but haven't gotten into it. Thanks for the super chat. From Jessica, I was a social worker and we were stationed in the police station. We would and we would respond together. I think more areas should do it. But a few years ago, they shut down that office. And yeah, I definitely agree with that. You know, that it gets into that whole thing of rethinking police, how policing is done, in the defund movement and all these kind of things. And, you know, it doesn't have to be this way that you know, every time you dial 911, basically the SWAT team shows up and, you know, and look what happens. And we need to have a different type of you know, police serve and protect type of service, you know, not just militarized. All right, we had some good chatting in tonight from Mr. JB Font. Peach State, Quaker State, says JB, and then he said excellent when the eggs came up. And I think we got to JB's bedtime. JB said, going to bed. Good night, everyone. Forehead kisses, as JB would say. We had one from Roger here on the old rock fins. Oh, let me clear that off. There we go. From Roger on the rock fins. Looks like the state of Massachusetts needs a citizens ballot initiative CBI amendment that when it comes to prosecution of law enforcement, shift the burden away from the DA's office to a special independent prosecutor located within the Attorney General's office, chosen by the survivors or the community who has no previous relationship with law enforcement, having full state resources to conduct their job. And thanks for that Rockfin chat, Roger. And yeah, I definitely, you know, see where he's coming from and what he's talking about in terms of we need to have real civilian review boards that have real power and that are independent and really, you know, get to the bottom of these things. Massachusetts, it's an interesting situation here because these police shootings in Massachusetts are very rare. That is one of the things that stands out with this case. Is it's very rare that these kind of shootings happen. I think there are various reasons for that. Some of it are socioeconomic. I think, you know, the police forces, you know, I'm not going to praise them and say they're great or anything, but I think compared to a lot of places, the forces are more professional here, and they're generally just more resourced. And so we don't get a lot of this, but, you know, this one certainly sounds questionable, to say the least. Yeah, let's see. We were talking about Katie Porter and all, you know, who's going to run for Dianne Feinstein's seat and whatever. And, you know, of course, when it comes down to it, these are really just performative fights between, you know, Democrats and between Republicans. And you know, I always want to frame things into the frame of top 0.1% versus the rest of us. When you put everything in that framework and that politicians, people, ideas are either on one side or the other, then you basically see all Democrats and Republicans are in one side of that framing and the rest of us, 99%, are on the other side.
That's right. That's right. Dude, Lisa Marie Presley just died.
Mm-hmm. So is Elvis
Cardiac
still
arrest.
alive and Lisa Marie dead? No, I think they're both gone.
Yeah, cardiac arrest.
How old is she? You know?
54.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus.
It happens.
That's the third cardiac arrest we've talked about this, past 2 weeks?
Oh, the whole connection that shall not be mentioned, potentially.
54 years old.
Should be studied. What's going on here? But all right. Everybody carry on to call in.
That's right. We are going to head over to call in. So guys, this is episode 71. I can't believe I've done that many episodes so far on call in, but Jimmy Dore interview recap. Let's chat about my interview with Jimmy Dore. How do you feel about Force the Vote and AOC's defense of the Democrats fighting for concessions? Should be a good conversation. Let's go ahead and head on over there. The link is pinned to the top of the live chat. If you're not familiar with Call-In, FYI, you don't have to download the app anymore. You can also use your browser for Call-In as well, and you can still call in through your computer. So let's go ahead and head over there. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight, guys. I'll be back again tomorrow night. And you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight. you.